Jake was a university student living in a quiet Indiana home near a dense forest. During the day, the area seemed peaceful, but at night, the woods cast an eerie shadow over the property. Behind his house, beneath the deck, sat a hot tub. That's where the strange events unfolded. It was Saturday night, March 29th, around 12:30 a.m. Spring break was winding down, and classes were about to resume. Jake invited his three best friends, Liam, Noah, and Ethan, for one final night of fun before school started again. They gathered in the garage, playing pool, cranking up music, and sipping drinks. The atmosphere was lively, filled with laughter and good vibes. After some time, Liam suggested they relax in the hot tub. The chilly night made the idea of warm water inviting, and everyone agreed. They changed into swim shorts, grabbed their beverages, and settled into the hot tub. The heat soothed them as they chatted, joked, and lost track of time. Then a noise interrupted them. It was the sound of twigs snapping, like footsteps approaching from the forest. It didn't sound like an animal, it felt human. The group fell silent, scanning the darkness. Noah brushed it off, saying it was probably nothing. The others chuckled nervously, trying to shake off the unease. They turned the music louder and resumed their conversation. About 10 minutes later, a figure emerged from the woods, stepping into the glow of the deck's lights. He wore a long, dark jacket, light gray sweatpants, and a gaming headset. His eyes were wide, his expression blank. The group startled. They shouted, demanding to know who he was and why he was there. The man raised his hands and said his name was Caleb, age 33. He claimed he heard their laughter and wanted to join them. The friends exchanged confused glances. Jake told him to leave, but Caleb ignored him. Instead, he shed his jacket, kicked off his shoes, and removed his pants. Now, in just his underwear, he climbed into the hot tub. The group was speechless. Jake pulled out his phone and began recording. Not for amusement, but because the situation felt surreal. They interrogated Caleb, asking where he was from and if he knew anyone there. He repeated that he heard their laughter and wanted to hang out. Then he said something chilling. He admitted to harming a child. The mood shifted instantly. The friends leapt out of the hot tub, shouting for him to get out. They dragged him from the water. Caleb didn't resist. He stood there, soaked and staring, then slowly walked back into the woods without a word. The group rushed inside, locking every door. Some tried to laugh it off, but Jake and Liam felt uneasy, sensing the ordeal wasn't over. 15 minutes later, Liam suggested they secure the hot tub. Jake agreed, and they grabbed flashlights before stepping outside. Near the hot tub, Jake spotted something, a phone. He picked it up and the screen lit up. Whatever was on the lock screen made him drop it. He didn't describe it, but it terrified him. He warned that Caleb might return, and they hurried back inside to alert the others. The group tried to stay composed. Then a tapping sounded at the window. Jake knew who it was. He pulled back the curtain, and there stood Caleb. His face was ghostly pale, eyes wide with a disturbing grin. He said nothing. He didn't move. He just stared. Jake called for Liam. Liam rushed in and dialed the police. Jake grabbed a baseball bat and headed to the front door, yelling for Caleb to leave and take his phone. Caleb didn't respond. Instead, he slowly circled the house. Jake followed cautiously, peering through the deck window. Caleb was there again, staring inside. Jake shouted that the police were coming, but Caleb remained still. He raised a hand, waved once, then turned and vanished into the woods. The police arrived soon after, and the friends recounted everything. Officers searched the forest and found Caleb standing alone, gazing toward the house. They arrested him for trespassing, and the group thought it was over. But Jake wasn't convinced. Days later, he saw a Snapchat post from a nearby girl. It was a video showing a different man, not Caleb, attempting to break into her home at night. That unnerved Jake the most. It suggested Caleb wasn't alone. There might be others, possibly connected, and they might not be finished. In April 2022, a man named Ethan joined a construction job far from home through a 3-month work program. The pay was solid, and he needed the money. He was struggling financially, and working with his old friend Nate made the gig more appealing. They saw it as a refreshing break. Decent cash, a change of scenery, and a chance to escape life's daily grind. The job itself was straightforward. A few weeks in, Ethan had settled into the routine, but the area was isolated, deep in rural countryside. Long winding roads stretched for miles with little sign of life. Ethan loved nature and viewed the solitude as a chance to disconnect. While most co-workers spent weekends drinking, Ethan had other plans. He craved peace, so when Friday came, he packed his gear for a weekend of hiking and camping deep in the forest. A trailhead 5 minutes from his temporary housing was his starting point. Within 20 minutes, he was immersed in the woods. The only sounds were the wind and his boots crunching leaves. He smoked a couple joints, letting his worries fade. The solitude was soothing, at first. Around 7 p.m., the sun dipped below the treetops. Shadows stretched across the path. Ethan knew it was time to set up camp. Then he noticed something odd. A faint smell of burning wood lingered, and wisps of smoke drifted through the trees. At first, it seemed plausible. Perhaps another camper, or a local. But then, he glimpsed a faint orange flicker through the trees. Intrigued and self-assured, Ethan left the trail to investigate. He wasn't afraid. He'd trained in martial arts as a teen and stayed fit. Still, something felt wrong. As he approached, he saw strange metallic glints. Shopping carts, dozens of them. They were tied to trees, some dangling from ropes, others twisted into unnatural shapes like a grim display of rusted metal. It didn't look like a campsite. It looked like a ritual site, meant to intimidate. Ethan pulled out his phone and snapped photos. He needed proof. No one would believe this otherwise. Then, something stranger caught his eye. Above the fire hung a charred vintage duck ornament. Perched on it was a scorched baby doll, its limbs melted and warped. Ethan photographed it too, but the longer he stared, the more unsettled he felt. His chest tightened. The fire was active, recently tended. Scattered water bottles suggested someone had been there, or was still there, possibly watching. He considered turning back, but pressed on, convincing himself it was just a strange loner, likely harmless. Still, he glanced behind him more than once. 20 minutes later, he distanced himself from the eerie sight. Daylight was fading, and he needed firewood before dark. He veered off the trail to gather supplies. He had emergency wood, but needed more for the night. After an hour, Ethan set up his tent and started a small fire. Around 9 p.m., he cooked a steak and potato meal in foil, placing it in the embers. He smoked another joint to ease his nerves, and for a while he felt at ease. With his meal done and the fire glowing, Ethan settled in. He played a pre-downloaded true crime podcast, listening to tales of unsolved cases as the forest darkened. No signal, no distractions, just firelight and eerie stories. Eventually, he dozed off. He jolted awake. The tent was freezing. The fire had dwindled. His phone read 4 a.m. He didn't know what woke him until he heard it, whistling. A slow, haunting melody drifting through the trees. He froze. His body locked up. He lay still, listening as the sound grew closer. Then the whistling stopped. What came next was worse. Soft footsteps. Quick, light, circling his tent. He couldn't see them, but he heard twigs snapping and leaves rustling. His heart pounded. Instinct kicked in. He leapt up, yanked on his boots, and burst from the tent. The footsteps came from the trail he'd entered. The path back to safety was cut off. He had no choice but to run deeper into the forest. He sprinted, crashing through branches and underbrush. Behind him, more footsteps. Multiple, chaotic, not one person. 2, maybe more. Their sounds overlapping. For 5 minutes he ran until his lungs burned and his legs screamed. He found a thick cluster of trees and dove into the underbrush, burying himself in leaves and roots. He didn't move. He barely breathed. The footsteps faded, but he stayed hidden. He waited, silent in the dark. Eventually he had to move. He crawled through the forest, branches slicing his skin. Every step was cautious. When the trees thinned, he recognized the trailhead and sprinted without stopping. No one pursued him. The forest was silent, but the fear lingered. He reached his housing and reported the incident to the police. They took his statement but never followed up. Ethan believes those who chased him created that bizarre shrine of carts and dolls. Their purpose, their motives. He doesn't know. It felt ritualistic, cult-like. He completed his contract and went home. But the memory haunts him. The whistling, the footsteps, the helplessness. He can't forget. Years ago, 3 high school buddies, Cole, Dylan, and Mason, decided to explore a sewer tunnel in their neighborhood. It was a frigid winter night. The tunnel lay at the edge of their community, beneath a small stream near vacant office buildings. These buildings were dark and deserted at night. The boys had noticed the tunnel before but never ventured inside. It always seemed creepy, though they teased each other about it, secretly curious. That night, they resolved to investigate. They brought sleds as a cover story in case anyone questioned them. They knew they weren't supposed to be there, but the thrill was irresistible. As they arrived at the parking lot, a police car pulled up. An officer stepped out, asking what they were up to. Someone had spotted them on a security camera. Mason quickly said they were just sledding. The officer eyed them, then told them to leave. They did, but only temporarily. After driving around for half an hour, they returned, parking farther away behind a building to avoid detection. They trekked down a hill toward the tunnel. Their breath was visible in the icy air. The tunnel loomed before them, large, round, and pitch black inside. They switched on their flashlights and stepped in. Inside, the ground was dry. It was silent, save for the faint drip of water deeper within. The walls were covered in graffiti. Most of it seemed old, but one detail stood out. A date spray-painted in bold red numbers, 6/1919. The paint appeared fresh, unlike the faded tags around it. That made them uneasy. Their flashlights were weak, barely piercing the darkness. Still, they pressed on, pretending to be brave, though nerves gnawed at them. The deeper they went, the colder it became. The temperature plummeted. Even underground, their breath was visible. The walls glistened with ice. Large icicles dangled from the ceiling. Some were massive and jagged. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed from deeper in the tunnel, like something heavy striking stone. Terrified, the group fled. The noise wasn't from them. It came from far ahead, beyond their sight. They stumbled and crashed into each other as they raced out. Outside, they were trembling and gasping. Then Cole realized his phone was gone. He'd dropped it during their escape. Dylan and Mason urged him to forget it, refusing to go back, but Cole wouldn't listen. He grabbed his flashlight and headed toward the tunnel again. The others reluctantly followed. The tunnel felt different now, darker, heavier. The air was oppressive, like something was off. Their flashlights seemed dimmer, and the silence was suffocating. It felt like they were being watched. At some point, off camera, Cole recovered his phone. The group ventured deeper, curious despite their fear. Then a noise stopped them. A piercing scream echoed from the tunnel's depths. It reverberated, growing louder, closer. They didn't hesitate. They spun around and sprinted out, not speaking, not looking back. They just ran. They reached the car, piled in, and sped off without pause. The drive home was quiet. The friends thought it was over, ready to move on. But late that night, Cole's doorbell rang twice at an odd hour. When his dad checked, no one was there. Were they followed home, or was it just a poorly timed prank? That question lingers. The night left them with more mysteries than answers, but they all heard the sounds and captured it on video. Maybe they stumbled into something they weren't meant to find.